Welcome back to our channel. Today's episode is both warm and heart-pounding, centered on Toan and Diem. Toan has started rebuilding the house piece by piece, from the clothes-drying area to the bathroom, while Diem works tirelessly at the market selling vegetables to earn money for his medicine. But peace doesn't last long. After a long day at the market, Toan and Diem sit down to eat spicy noodles, dreaming about easier days ahead. What they don't know is that just minutes later on their way home, two men who once hurt Toan suddenly appear blocking their path and demanding the password to a bank card. Toan is stunned, his memories thrown into chaos. Diem panics as she sees him shoved to the ground and herself grabbed by the collar in the darkness of the night. Luckily, Officer Thu arrives just in time, forcing the two men to flee. But the biggest questions remain. How did they know Toan was here? And what secret is hidden inside that bank card? Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the next episode, because after this shocking incident, the hidden truths of Toan's past will begin to come to light. The spicy noodle shop sat right along the edge of the road, small but always warm. White lights reflected off the wet stainless steel table, catching the beads of sweat still clinging to Toan's forehead after a long day at the market. Outside, the flow of traffic mixed with the last street calls of the evening. Lively, yet distant, as if all the day's exhaustion had been left back at the corner of the alley. Diem sat across from him, both hands wrapped around a cold glass of water, her fingers absent-mindedly spinning the straw. She didn't say much. She just looked at Toan. Her gaze noticeably softer, the look of someone who had pushed through a hard day, but still had enough faith left to smile. Toan bent over his bowl of bright red noodles. The steam rose with a sharp heat that stung his nose. He took a sip. The spice burned, then slowly settled into a warm, comforting feeling in his chest. Some days, happiness was that simple. A hot bowl of noodles, someone sitting across from you, and a brief moment of calm in an otherwise unsteady life. On the wall, a fan spun steadily, carrying the smell of chili paste and fried scallions through the air, creating a strangely familiar comfort. Diem used a napkin to wipe a bit of water from the edge of the table. Such a small, careful motion, the same way she did everything ever since Toan came back to her. He noticed, and something inside him softened. He was no longer lost like he'd been in those early days after losing his memory, no longer surviving by clinging to the kindness of others. Here, right now, he felt like he was home in the truest sense of the word, even though the real house back at the farm was still unfinished. But peace is sometimes just a blink. It arrives as gently as the steam from a bowl of noodles and can disappear just as fast. From the table next to them came the screech of a chair scraping against tile. Outside, a cold gust slipped in, making the plastic curtain by the door rustle softly. The sky seemed to darken slightly. Not nightfall, but the quiet kind of darkness that comes when clouds gather without warning. Dust particles thickened in the beam of light near the entrance, as if signaling that something was about to shift. Toan set his chopsticks down and took a quick drink of water, as if trying to wash away the spice burning in his throat. Diem glanced at him, then toward the road where cars were speeding past faster than before. She pulled her shopping bag closer to her feet, a habit of someone who worries ahead without needing to name it. Neither of them said anything, but the noodle shop suddenly felt different. The air seemed heavier, slower, like the space itself was holding on to an unspoken warning. For a brief moment, Toan felt his heart beat harder. He didn't know if it was from the spice, the fatigue, or a familiar instinct he still hadn't learned how to explain. Diem remained seated calm on the surface, but her eyes were no longer as relaxed as before. They paid and stood up, carrying the lingering warmth of the noodles on their sleeves, leaving behind the fading sounds of the market. As they stepped out of the shop, the wind rushed past them again, colder, sharper, and at that very moment, at the far end of the road, leading back to the farm, something bad was already waiting in silence, like a trap carefully hidden beneath just enough calm to make anyone let their guard down. The road back to the farm grew darker with every step. Cold wind lashed through the trees along the path, sending dry leaves swirling like thin trails of smoke. Toan walked close beside Diem, the shopping bag still carrying the smell of the market of spicy noodles, of a warmth that had only just settled in his chest. But the deeper they went into the quiet stretch of road, the fewer house lights there were, and the air began to feel tight, almost suffocating. Suddenly, an engine roared behind them, then cut off sharply. A beam of headlights swept across the road, blindingly bright. Two motorbikes spun around, fast tires grinding against the dry ground with a chilling sound. Within seconds, they blocked the path, standing there like two dark figures rising out of the night. Two men stepped off the bikes, their movements familiar enough to make Toan freeze. Not because he remembered who they were, but because his body locked up on its own, as if dragged back into an old fear buried deep in his bones. Their eyes flicked over Toan, and then lingered, the look of men who had hurt someone before and believed their victim would never dare fight back. One of them tossed a bank card onto the ground in front of Toan. The edge was scratched, like it had been kept in someone's pocket for far too long. His voice was cold and urgent as he demanded the pin right there. He said they'd had the card all along. This was the last thing they needed to drain it dry. Toan stood there frozen. His mind was blank, his memories in pieces, with nothing but the heavy thudding of his heart in his ears. He tried to dig for a familiar set of numbers, but the harder he tried, the more his head throbbed like it was being squeezed shut. Diem stepped forward half a step, her hand instinctively rising in front of Toan's chest. She didn't understand how they knew him, and she couldn't imagine that these men were connected to his mother, the person behind the tragedy that had sent Toan drifting all the way here. In the thick darkness, the two engines kept idling, sputtering like a warning, and the road back to the farm, just a few bends away, suddenly became a trap with no way out. The air shifted instantly. While Toan stood frozen to the road, one of the men stepped closer, his eyes hard with impatience. He repeated the demand for the pin, his voice rough and sharp, like a blade scraping against stone. Toan tried to speak, but every number in his mind was just blank space. The harder he pushed himself to remember, the tighter the pain squeezed his head, leaving him dizzy on the verge of collapsing. Then the shove came without warning. A rough hand slammed into Toan's chest, sending him stumbling backward before he crashed to the ground, his back hitting the hard dirt. The shopping bag flew from his hand, bundles of vegetables scattering and rolling in the dust. Toan braced his palms to sit up, but his breathing was already out of control, his vision darkening for a split second. Diem lunged forward on instinct, but before she could reach him, the other man grabbed her by the collar and yanked hard. The fabric stretched tight as her feet slid back half a step, her heart pounding wildly. She struggled to stay upright, Her eyes locked on Toan, as if looking away for even a second might cause him to be pulled out of her life once again. At that exact moment, a sound tore through the night. A siren wailed from the end of the road, sharp commanding. Red and blue lights swept across the ground across the men's faces, making them flinch like they'd seen a ghost. The instant they spotted a uniformed figure rushing toward them, they let go and jumped back onto their bikes. No more threats. No more forcing. Only engines screaming as two dark figures bolted into the darkness. Diem dropped to her knees beside Toan, her hands trembling as she brushed the dirt from his shoulders. In the distance, the sound of police footsteps closed in fast. And tonight, the secret behind Toan's bank card began to surface in a way no one could have expected. Officer Thu reached them just as Diem's knees hit the ground. "Easy, easy," he said firmly, crouching down beside Toan while keeping one hand raised to signal the other officers to secure the area. His voice was calm, trained the kind that steadied a situation before anyone realized they were shaking. "You're safe now. They're gone." Diem barely heard him. Her hands were already on Toan's shoulders, fingers trembling as she tried to brush the dirt away, only to stop short when she saw the dark smear near his hairline. Blood. Not much, but enough. Too much for her. "Your head?" Her voice broke. "Toan, you're bleeding." Toan blinked, still trying to steady his breathing. The world had stopped spinning, but everything felt distant, like he was underwater. He reached up, touched the side of his head, then looked at his fingers. "It's nothing," he said quickly, almost too quickly. He forced a small smile, the kind he'd learned to use since waking up with no memories. A smile meant to reassure, to reduce worry. "Just a scrape." "I'm okay." Diem shook her head hard, tears already spilling over. "You're not okay. You fell. They pushed you." Her hands hovered, afraid to touch him too hard, afraid not to touch him at all. I should have. Officer Thu cut in gently. "Miss, it's not your fault." He shone a flashlight briefly, careful not to blind Toan, checking the wound. It looked superficial. "He didn't lose consciousness, right?" No, Toan answered before Diem could. "I didn't pass out." "That's good." Thu nodded. "But we'll still need to get this cleaned up. You're going to need a proper check." Toan opened his mouth to protest, then stopped when he felt Diem's hand clutch the sleeve of his shirt, gripping like an anchor. Her shoulders were shaking now. Silent crying, the kind that came from holding on too hard for too long. He softened his voice. "Diem, look at me." She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red, wet, full of fear she hadn't had time to process yet. "I'm here," he said. "I didn't go anywhere." Her lips trembled. "I was so scared. When they pushed you, I thought." She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't want to give it shape, didn't want to make it real. Toan reached out despite the dull ache spreading from his head and cupped her wrist. His hand was warm, steady. "I'm still here," he repeated. "You didn't lose me." Behind them, officers were speaking into radios, giving descriptions, confirming directions. The sound of procedure filled the night, but it felt far away, like background noise to something much more fragile unfolding between the two of them. Officer Thu stood up slightly. "Can you stand?" he asked Toan. Toan nodded and pushed himself up slowly. His legs wobbled for a second. Diem gasped and instinctively grabbed him, pressing her shoulder against his side to support his weight. "I've got him," she said, her voice shaky but determined. Toan felt it then, not just the pain, but the weight of her fear. The way her hands wouldn't let go. The way her breathing was still uneven. "I'm really okay," he murmured, leaning just enough into her to reassure her without fully relying on her. "If I wasn't, I'd tell you." She let out a broken laugh through tears. "You're terrible at convincing people." Officer Thu allowed himself a brief smile. "That's usually how you know someone's trying to be brave." He gestured toward the police car parked a little farther down the road. "We'll take statements later. Right now, priority is making sure he's okay." There's a first aid kit in the car. As they walked, Diem didn't let go. Her hand stayed hooked into Toan's arm fingers, tight like the ground itself couldn't be trusted anymore. At the car, Thu opened the kit and carefully cleaned the wound. Toan hissed slightly when the disinfectant touched his skin, then immediately shook his head. "Sorry," he said automatically. "It's fine." Diem flinched at the sound. "Does it hurt?" "Just a little sting," he said. "Really?" She watched every movement, every breath, like she was afraid he might disappear if she blinked. Officer Thu worked efficiently. "You're lucky," he said. "If they'd hit you with something, it could have been worse." Diem's grip tightened. "Why did they come here?" she asked, suddenly her voice low but sharp. "How did they know where we live?" Thu paused. "That's what we're going to find out." Toan looked away, his jaw tightening. The image of the bank card flashed in his mind again. The scratched edge, the way it felt strangely heavy, like it carried more than just money. "They said they already had the card," Diem continued. "They said they just needed the password." Thu nodded slowly. "Which means this isn't random." The word hung in the air. Toan swallowed. "I don't remember the password," he said quietly. "I really don't." Thu met his eyes. "That might be a good thing." Diem looked between them. "What does that mean?" "It means whatever is connected to that card," Thu said carefully, "was important enough for someone to hurt you for it. And important enough for your memory to block it out." Diem's face went pale. Toan felt her tremble again, and instinctively, he straightened his posture despite the ache in his body. He didn't want to look weak. Not now. Not when she was already breaking. "Hey," he said softly, turning toward her. "Don't think about that yet." "How can I not?" she whispered. "They came out of nowhere. They knew you. They hurt you. What if they come back?" "They won't," he said, firmer this time. He glanced at Officer Thu. "Right." Thu nodded. "We'll patrol the area, and I'll personally follow up on this. You have my word." Diem wiped her tears with the back of her hand, embarrassed, but unable to stop them. I don't want to lose you again," she said. "Not like before. Not without even knowing what happened." Toan's chest tightened. He lifted his uninjured hand and rested it over hers. "You didn't lose me before," he said. "I just couldn't find my way back yet." She shook her head. "It didn't feel like that." "I know," he said quietly. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." She searched his face as if checking for cracks in his resolve. "You promise?" she asked. He smiled, not forced this time, but gentle, tired, real. "I promise I'll do everything I can to stay." Officer Thu closed the kit. "We'll need you both to come to the station tomorrow to give full statements," he said. "Tonight you should rest. If he feels dizzy, nauseous, or if the headache gets worse, take him to the hospital immediately." "I'll watch him," Diem said at once. "I won't sleep." Toan let out a small sigh. "You have to sleep." She shot him a look. "Don't argue with me." Officer Thu chuckled softly. That's not a fight you're going to win. When the police finally stepped back, the road felt eerily quiet again. Too quiet. The farm lights glowed faintly in the distance. As they walked the last stretch home, Diem stayed close, her hand never leaving his. Toan slowed his steps to match hers, even though he wanted nothing more than to get inside and sit down. Inside the house, she guided him to a chair and immediately went to get water. A clean cloth, anything she could think of. "I'm fine," he said again gently. "I know," she replied, voice still thick. "But let me take care of you." He didn't argue this time, as she knelt in front of him, carefully pressing the cloth against his temple. Toan watched her face. The worry, the exhaustion, the love she hadn't tried to hide even once. He realized something then. The pain in his head would fade. The fear would eventually loosen its grip. But the way she held onto him like she was anchoring him to the world, that was something he never wanted to forget. No matter what the past revealed, no matter what that card was hiding, tonight Toan made a quiet decision. Whatever memories came back, whatever truth waited behind them, he would face it standing. So Diem would never have to carry his weight alone again. The house was quiet again, but it was no longer the kind of quiet that felt peaceful. It was fragile, like a pause before something else began. Toan sat still while Diem finished cleaning the wound on his head. The bleeding had stopped, but her hands lingered longer than necessary, as if letting go too soon might undo everything that had just happened. She finally stepped back, studying his face one more time. "You're really okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I am, tired, but okay." She exhaled a breath she'd been holding in since the moment he fell. For the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed just a little. She sat down across from him, wrapping her arms around herself. Outside, the wind moved through the trees again, but this time it sounded distant. The danger was gone for now. Yet the questions it left behind were heavier than the night itself. Toan leaned back against the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The image of the bank card refused to fade. Scratched, worn, familiar in a way he couldn't explain. Diem looked at him, her expression steady despite the fear still lingering in her eyes. "Then we'll face it together," she said. "One step at a time." He turned to her, surprised by the calm in her voice. "You're not scared?" he asked. "I am," she admitted. "But I'm more scared of running away. We've already lost too much time." The night passed quietly after that. But dawn would bring questions, and answers would come whether they were ready or not. What was hidden behind that bank card? Why had those men been so desperate? And what role did Toan's past and his family really play in everything that was happening now? Those secrets would not stay buried for long. If you want to find out what happens next, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay with Toan and Diem on the road ahead. Your support helps us continue bringing these stories to life, and the next episode will reveal the first real clues about Toan's past.